ова издание на Еврозум. Мој гостин е известувачот за Македонија во Европскиот парламент Ричард Ховит. Mr. Howit, welcome and thank you to accept my invitation to participate in my program. Despite all effort that you made, I mean, you, Commissioner Füle, the people in the Commission as such, and some member states also, to push Macedonia forward in the process of the European integration. Today on Council of Ministers and later on the European Council, Macedonia will be almost a non-issue. Why do you think? Why so?
Well, firstly, I want to say that I'm not going to sit here and defend a decision I don't agree with. You know, it's been my position consistently since becoming rapporteur for the country's accession that there should be talks and a date should be set to start. And I think for my own credibility and that of the European Parliament, it's very important that I put on record that we think that date should have been given, and it's extremely disappointing that the European Council won't be doing that this week. But you asked me why. Why? Because we know that the political events in the course of the last months haven't proceeded fast enough after the events of the 24th of December in particular, and that there have been profound reservations about that. And, you know, I have some deep concerns about that, which is why I didn't sit back and criticise. I got involved and helped negotiate the agreement that was done in March, but it's fair to say that it's taken a long time for the Parliamentary Commission of Inquiry to be set up, that the parties have yet still to agree the memorandum between themselves for the European perspective. And my appeal to people in the country today is, I know you will share my disappointment. Many of you will feel that you're feeling it more than me, although I promise you that's not the case. I deeply am disappointed by what the decision is. But my appeal to people in the country is, on this occasion, let us here voice that criticism, and please stay patient in the country, concentrate on the things that you've committed to do, because this is a very sensitive moment, and I still believe that this country can succeed, we can succeed together, and that of course is my strongest desire.
But what's the problem? The inquiry commission was established.
It was established after several months, and the hope was that preliminary findings could have come out before the European Council to show that real progress was being made. Similarly with the Memorandum of Understanding. And now I myself in the last week have talked to one of the members of that commission. It took a long time, but I'm very pleased that it's starting to work. One of my appeals too is give them space. People in the country, ordinary citizens, journalists, others involved in politics, let them do a job. Let them do a serious job. Let's not this take place in the full glare of publicity. If they can come up with serious and credible conclusions that can really strengthen democracy in the country, have some accountability for what happens, but not be a sort of public fight all the way through between the parties, that will do the country well. And so I want that commission to succeed, and that's another appeal that I'm using your programme to make tonight.
Okay. In May, Mr. Howit, you said that Macedonian progress is in danger. Who exposed Macedonia on danger?
Well, those were my comments. You're quoting me from the parliamentary speech I made when we put through the European Parliament vote on the progress report this year. I repeat, a recommendation that I put for the talks to start. But I was honest in that. I think it's been reports, and some felt when I made that speech that somehow that I'd gone off. I was getting cool on the membership of the country of the European Union. The opposite. I want to just be honest. I want this country to succeed. I want it to be a member of the European Union. I spend my waking hours really worrying and thinking about that and working for it. But I don't think that I help the country, its people and its prospects for joining the European Union by being dishonest about the difficulties and the challenges and the barriers. And that's why I was honest, and why I said that there is a danger that the country will lose its candidate status, because it's true. I wish it wasn't true, but it is true. And it is very.
It's true that Macedonia could lose
its candidate status. Yes, on issues like parliamentary democracy, a function of a proper, independent, scrutinising parliament, on issues like freedom of the press, where You know, like it or not, the country has gone down the international league table in recent years on issues concerning other aspects of progress in terms of respect for human rights, the rule of law, political pluralism. There are deep challenges. Like no one from the government or anywhere in politics denies those challenges. But if we do, this is not just about the name issue. Some people will say if it's just the name issue that's stopping the country. Now, I deeply want a resolution of the name issue, but it is more than that.
But there was a recent statement of the Prime Minister saying that the problem is that the European Union is not able to make something with the member states, as Greece, for example, and that it's only obstacle that because the European Union is weak to resolve the internal problems within the European Union with one member state. Now European Union is going to invent the reasons why not to give Macedonia the date to start the negotiation. What do you think about such a statement? I mean, it looks like you are inventing the stories of freedom of the press, political dialogue, parliamentary democracy.
It's a fair question, but it's not true. The European Union didn't invent what happened on the 24th of December. It's not invented the collapse of the round table with the journalists and therefore the interruption of progress towards working towards freedom of expression. But I started this interview saying it's not an excuse either. I believe that the European Union should have done and should do more to help this country to become a member of the European Union. I'm simply saying that on this occasion, me and colleagues in Brussels, great advocates, there are many great friends and advocates of the country and its European prospects. Let us voice that criticism just at this crucial moment, because what I don't want from any political actor in the country is a very negative reaction that will turn public opinion again, potentially in the wrong direction as far as Europe is concerned, that will make it more difficult to make progress with Greece and with Bulgaria. It's a fact of life that Greece and Bulgaria are members of the European Union, and this country isn't. You know, I'm trying to make sure that's different and that this country is on equal terms with every member of the European Union. But that's not a weakness, it's a fact of life. And it's a fact of life that people like me are working very hard to try and overcome. And I want understanding and sympathy and support for that in the country. And the best thing that can be shown is not a negative, hostile, provocative response to this non-decision of the European Council. The best thing is a patience and an understanding of what we're trying to do here, and then a real enthusiasm and determination to do the right things for reform within the country itself.
As I said, you made a huge effort to help Macedonia. You, some other EMPs, Commissioner Fule, Mr. Sanino, some member states, as I said. And despite all the efforts you made, Macedonia was not able to deliver some of the promises. After all, from this time distance, let's say, what do you think, is there any clear political will in Macedonia to start the negotiation for accession?
I think there is a political will. The new Deputy Prime Minister...
So what's the problem? If there is a political will, if there is support from your side, I mean, where's the problem?
Well, firstly, progress is being made. You know, let's not underplay that. At many levels in the technical reform process, I've been critical, for example, on freedom of expression in this interview, but you know, all of the pressure around decriminalising the defamation law did work, and you know, that has been driven through. So it's important to give credit where credit's due. You know, this week in the European Council, the problems aren't only for this country. You know, you're well aware that they're for Serbia too, they're for Turkey too. That the whole accession process is not easy, it's not straightforward, it doesn't happen simplistically. And when you say we've expended all these efforts and it hasn't worked, this isn't the end game, right? The end game will be when the country joins the European Union. It will happen. Yeah, what I want to insist with you and with everyone in the country is that those enthusiastic, determined efforts from me and from us will continue. We're not giving up this week. next week, next month. I am absolutely determined we will continue this fight and we will get European Union membership. It needs the right response on the side of the government and everyone in the country, but I am determined still we will succeed.
How do you comment after the clear December summit conclusion, your resolution, giving the clear perspective for Macedonia to start the negotiation? 24th December events happened, local election with many incidents. You know very well, I think, that what's going on around the municipality of Centar, where the new mayor was elected from opposition. How do you explain all this development on the domestic political scene, despite such a clear statement from highest level in the European Union?
Well, I think it's a hypothetical argument, but I'll put it, if the European Union had done what the European Parliament and the European Commissioner wanted 4 years ago and given a date for talks on the first time the recommendation was for the talks to start, would those events have happened? Would the response have been in the same way? I'm not sure. It doesn't mean we're to blame. It doesn't mean that I'm going to offer excuses for the things that went wrong in the country, but I think we have our own role to play in relation to that. And of course, as one of the people who supported the negotiations and helped get agreement on the 1st of March, don't be surprised when I say I'm absolutely determined that what was agreed will be implemented. You talk about the problems, it's right, I don't sweep over those. But there was a commitment there for the Commission of Inquiry, there was a commitment there for the Memorandum of Understanding, and I'm absolutely determined to focus on those. And my appeal today is that the parties, everyone in the country, show that same determination and commitment.
Mr. Howit, I must ask you about your personal involvement. I mean, what's happened on 24th of December? The pictures, the images were shown, and a big part of the Macedonian society was shocked, but also many people in the international community. There was no reaction from your side. You were not timely informed, or you think that it's normal that such an incident happened in European democracy? What was the problem? But we were surprised that the rapporteur in European Parliament is not reacting.
I couldn't disagree with your question more. What I didn't do is get the first media report and then jump in a sensationalist way into the media myself and make a judgment on the first day. I'll fully accept that. But that's because I've got a serious job to do, a serious job to steer this country towards the European accession, and making snap judgments and being part of the provocation on difficult issues isn't a constructive, sensible, diplomatic approach, and I make no apology for not doing that on day one. I associated myself, though, with the statement of the European Commissioner within 2 days of the events, and that is on the record. But then I did what I think the responsible thing was, which is not to mouth off in the media very quickly. It was to come to the country, speak with all the parties involved. I stood in the Parliament chamber, the Sobrani. I went on to the public gallery where the journalists are cleared from. I listened to the stories. I spoke with the Speaker of the Parliament. But when I'd done that, I spoke out. I talked about the danger for the country. I talked about the unacceptable nature of what happened on that day. No, I'm not the judge and jury. I didn't ascribe blame, and that's not right. The Commission of Inquiry must do its job. But I didn't hold back my words of concern about how grave and serious what happened was. And you'll find that all on the record. And I believe I've done the right thing as a constructive friend of the country, not a sensationalist response making matters worse, but a clear, considered, serious and honest response showing the gravity of the situation, but then trying to be part of constructively finding a solution.
Mr. Howit, you know well that the political dialogue is a big problem in Macedonia. You were deeply involved in the March agreement. You have a good experience talking with the Macedonian politicians. What do you think, having in mind your experience, what's the problem that Macedonia is not able to establish a proper political dialogue?
Amongst the two main political parties on the Macedonian community, it's extremely polarised and personal.
Why so? Why so? What's your personal impression?
I'm a politician. It's not unusual in countries that political parties don't like each other, and sometimes
it's obvious. I mean,
sometimes there are bad
in all
personal
democracy
relations.
parties are not in love. That's for sure. But I mean, can you explain this animosity between the two parties, which is obvious?
I think it's partly personal, right? And as I say, it's not. We've both agreed it's not unusual in democracies that can be the case. But my appeal in March, and my appeal this week in the light of the European Council, is whatever our political disagreements in the country, whatever personal animosities there are, there's a bigger picture out there. And the bigger picture is that this is a country that is suffering still deep poverty and economic being held back economically by the world recession, struggling to get the investment that is needed. It's a country where there is peace and stability of a type that isn't enjoyed everywhere around, but where we understand that the relations between the different ethnic communities are fragile. It's a country where democracy is only being embedded. It is not yet really solid. Where, whether it's the press or civil society, having a genuinely independent, pluralistic, confident, non-politicised, non-party politicised press and civil society is a real challenge, not just in the country, but in all of the countries of the Western Balkans. So, it is not surprising that many of these things are true, and therefore the relations between the parties and the polarisation we've seen are a product of that. But I'm part of trying to change it.
Several times the Parliament and the Commission both asked Macedonia to make progress in the field of the freedom of the media. The situation looks like being worse today. Journalists, that car incident of the journalists raised many suspicions in the public opinion. Institutions don't care to explain more about what's happened. Another journalist today is in custody, no further explanation. So many things are happening right now and make the situation being worse than, let's say, 1 year ago. What's the problem with the freedom of the media?
Well, firstly, many of my friends and interlocutors in the country won't like me saying it, but it is worse. I agree with the premise of the question. I don't like having to do that, but it is my judgment, and I put that in the European Parliament resolution, and that is how the European Parliament voted. Now, we can talk about the closure of certain TV channels and so on, and each of those could be discussed on its merits. But the overall picture is one that is deeply worrying. I felt that former Deputy Prime Minister Arifi, with the roundtable she established with the journalists, with the progress on defamation, had begun to make progress. And I think the OSCE expert on freedom of the media acknowledged that. What we have now is a new media bill that's being promulgated by the government. I hear very different accounts and assessments of that bill, including some deep fears about it, including in relation to extending regulatory arrangements which were primarily intended in the country and in other countries, the broadcast media to the press and to the social media, that are well outside meeting the European directive on audiovisual media. So there are proper concerns and questions to be put there. But as I've been assured, there is a public consultation about that. It's now in its second round. And I want the Journalists Association, everyone who is cherishing freedom of expression in the country, to make sure that you do submit your comments in that consultation, that you put your view, make sure people like me and the European Commission hear it. But then the promise to all those who are critics of the new law that want to see progress on freedom of expression is that when the European Commission judges the progress or otherwise on freedom of the media, when I judge and put to the European Parliament to the vote the political assessment of that, our test will be how far the law reflects the European acquis or not. And that is a pretty clear statement for everyone who's following this issue, and I hope it's a helpful one to all who cherish freedom of expression in the country.
Despite your efforts to make situation better. As you said, the situation is worse. What's the problem with the so-called soft power of the European Union to implement the core value of European values such as freedom of the media? Is there any problem with the European so-called soft power to help and to implement the European values? In the case of Macedonia, of course, I'm asking you.
Well, this interview is being watched by Ambassador Araf and my colleagues in the European Commission delegation, EU delegation in Skopje, along with everyone else in the country. And I don't want to do an injustice to the power of the efforts we are putting in. We're putting in considerable amounts of money, technical assistance, promoting projects on issues like freedom of the media.
I said clearly you made a huge effort.
Yeah, but that's not just the effort of politicians, which I acknowledge and thank you for what you said. But I'm talking about the follow-up efforts of the experts, of the civil servants, of the Commission and EU staff, in partnership with civil society, with political actors and others in the country. And I don't want to denigrate, I'm sure you wouldn't either, the real efforts that there are. So, it's very easy for us to sit here in the European Parliament in Brussels and to say Europe either succeeds or Europe fails, the country either succeeds or the country fails. The enlargement is a journey. It's been a journey that took well over 10 years for the country of Eastern Europe. My own, as I've often said in Skopje and elsewhere in the country, my own country, Great Britain, was turned down for membership. France vetoed our membership. They had a referendum. They were against us, right? But we overcame the battles, and here we are, absolutely sitting at the table and part of everything. And that can still be the future. It will and can be the future for the country. And 80% of people in the country support membership of the European Union. It's the highest of any country. We will succeed.
Yeah. Are you worried about the future of the country?
Of course.
Why?
Because of the word I used earlier, fragility. That I understand that there are people in political parties in the different ethnic communities who completely share the vision that I've been putting to you today and I put every day in this European Parliament for the country. But I know there are others who don't. And I know that the level of consensus between the different actors in the country to achieve it is very fragile. And I don't want things to go backwards, but I know they might. And that's why, at this crucial, sensitive moment, I've asked for that patience and understanding. There will be many people, and many within good people and fair people, there'll be a temptation to react in a negative way to what's going on in Luxembourg and in Brussels this week. It would be the wrong reaction, though, for the future.
It's obvious that the name issue is one of the biggest obstacles for Macedonia. There was a proposal from the mediator, Nimitz. Do you have an idea what's happened with this proposal? I mean, till now, no one of ni Macedonia nor Greece haven't reacted on this proposal.
Well, no successful negotiation takes place in public, and I've said on many occasions that the solution, when it comes, as it must come, will come when perhaps it's least expected. All I can say is, when I was in one of my recent meetings with Mr. Gruevski, he said to me, "Do a deal. If I do a deal on the name issue, everything will be different." And he's right. He is right to say that, and I, of course, encouraged him to do everything within his power to do that deal. Yeah. I was talking with Stefan Füle, the European Commissioner, again literally last week on this, and he and I share the view that everything is still possible. We can't predict, and I don't predict that it's going to happen today, tomorrow. That is outside our control. But are serious talks and efforts taking place with the support, seriously, not just of the UN, but from us within the EU, that have some, we hope, more than some prospect of success.
You hope that the solution could come soon?
I absolutely do. It must, right? And I'm not saying that out of a
Are they political
naivety.
will on the both sides, do you think?
The promise I've always given in the country is that I put the same pressure on in Athens as I do in Skopje, that I talk robustly to Greek and to Bulgarian colleagues here. I represent their views too, I don't hide that. you know, which is why we come to a consensus in the European Parliament. I hope, by the way, showing that, you know, even where there is disagreement, it's possible in a parliament, in a parliamentary democracy, to come to agreement, to consensus. But the pressure that I put on in order to achieve a successful outcome on the name issue is equal on both sides. It's a promise I've made and it's a promise I keep.
Is there a political will on the both sides, you think? Greece and Macedonia?
That political will only be demonstrated when agreement is struck, and so forgive me if I reserve my judgment on that. But I am not a commentator, I'm not a critic sitting on the sidelines. I'm an actor myself trying to make things happen. So I'm not going to sit back and criticise either of the parties for lack of political will either. I'm part of the business of encouraging them to show it, and I will continue to be so.
Това беше Ричард Ховит, известувач во Европскиот парламент за Македонија. Ви благодарам за вниманието. Се гледаме во наредното издание на Еврозум.